Hello everyone and welcome back to Alternative Apex here for the 2022 Formula 1 season. We're here in Bahrain for pre-season testing ahead of the 2022 season, and the cars are hitting the track for the first time this year. You can see a few cars out on the circuit at the moment getting some laps on the board for the first time and seeing how their new cars handle at this circuit. Going into the 2022 season, there are a few changes here and there. First of all, there's some major new regulations this season, this affecting the aero, the chassis and the durability of these cars, so expect to see the performance slightly mixed up ahead of this season compared to last season. We've also got a few driver transfers here and there to mix up the driver lineups. No massive changes, but there's certainly some interesting ones in there. So make sure to stay tuned and watch the full video here previewing the 2022 Formula 1 season here in the Alternative Apex series. But without further ado, let's have a look at the 2021 driver lineups and the teams that will be entering. First up, we have the reigning champions in the Constructors and Drivers' Championship, Red Bull. They have retained their lineup of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez here. Unsurprisingly, after they took the Constructors' Championship, getting first and third in the Drivers' Championship as well. Red Bull had a very strong season last year, taking the first 5 wins of the season, 3 for Verstappen and 2 for Perez. Mercedes managed to fight back later in the season, but that was more down to bad luck for Red Bull rather than their car losing performance. So expect to see these guys strong this season. However, the regulations look to have not gone their way. In pre-season testing, they've not quite been the best car like they had last season. Not looking quite on their rivals' pace, but they're definitely still in the mix. So I expect to see Red Bull fighting for the championship this season and at least getting a few Grand Prix victories. Next up will be Mercedes, the team that got second in the Constructors' Championship last year. They also got second in the Drivers' Championship, of course, second and fourth. The team that very much came out second last season in basically every way they could. It took them 6 races to get their first win of the season, and even then, I believe they ended the season with only 3 victories, 2 for Hamilton and 1 for Bottas, which, given the success they'd come off in previous years, is a big shock to, I think, everyone in the Formula 1 community and those watching at home. No one expected Mercedes to struggle like they did last year. However, with the new regulations, Mercedes in 2014 nailed the regulation change, and it looks like they may well have done the same this time, with their car looking to be top of the timesheets so far in pre-season testing, with Bottas and Hamilton both looking on the pace, the pair taking turns at the top of the timesheets so far in pre-season testing, but Mercedes looking like they want to bounce back and take the championship away from Red Bull in the 2022 season. Next up is McLaren, the team that came up third in the championship last season. There was some points in last season where we thought maybe, just maybe, they can get themselves into the mix and take the fight to Mercedes and Red Bull for Constructors, but of course their car just wasn't as good. They had a few good races thanks to some luck going their way, but sort of once the luck balanced out, they found themselves very much in that third position, way off the top 2, but also clear of the rest of the midfield. So McLaren will be looking to make that extra step this year. In terms of podiums, they got 6 podiums last season, I believe, 3 to each of their drivers. On all 3 of them came in 3 consecutive races, where they got second and third in those races. So McLaren will be looking to one-up themselves though and try and get a race win in the 2022 season. And retaining their lineup of Norris and Ricciardo, they definitely got the chance to do just that, because that is one hell of a lineup. And if their car can perform, then I think it's no question that McLaren will find themselves on the top step of the podium. Next up is Ferrari, and this is where you see the first change of the day. Ferrari 4th in the Constructors' Championship last season, looking to beat themselves after a tough 2020. They bounced back a little bit in 2021, returning up into the top 4 in the championship, but still not a top team like they once were. A lot of people thought that one of the big reasons they struggled last season was the new driver, Carlos Sainz. He just did not perform consistently. He found himself battling the much lower down cars in the field, and well, I think it's fair to say he dragged down Ferrari last season, whether that be through his performance or through his luck. It was very much a one-car team in Ferrari last season, and they've tried to counteract that by bringing back in the vastly experienced and 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel. I think they really felt his loss last year and knew exactly what they needed to fill the hole that was left by him. That, of course, being him the perfect filler for that gap. Now we move to AlphaTauri. They've retained their driver lineup for this season. Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda, both drivers had some strong results last season. Of course, them ending the season with a 3rd and 4th in Mexico. So they're pretty confident going into the season. They're starting to build up some form. So if they can build a good car for next year, then maybe, just maybe, they can get themselves into that midfield mix. And I doubt we'll see them challenging up at the front. Pre-season testing has shown that they're not quite there at the moment. Perhaps looking closer to the Aston Martins and Alpines rather than the McLarens and Ferraris. But their pace is certainly not dropped off a cliff. They've got a car, I'd say, perhaps slightly not as good as last season, but this is just based off of what you've seen so far in pre-season testing. So perhaps if they develop more for round 1 and round 2, then maybe they can get themselves back into the mix and maybe find themselves on a podium next season. But I wouldn't say wins should be their target for next season. Maybe lower their expectations a little bit. Next up, we have Aston Martin, and again, you'll see another change here that's blatantly obvious already. And that is, of course, let's dive straight in it. Antonio Giovinazzi leaves Alfa Romeo. He's had enough. He doesn't want to be in that Ferrari Junior Academy anymore. And with the absence left by Vettel at Aston Martin, he took up that drive and will be looking to lead the team into 2022. The Aston Martin car has not looked too bad in pre-season testing so far. Both drivers seeming to like the car's handling very well. Both drivers, I wouldn't say up in the mix of McLarens and Ferraris quite, but as I said about AlphaTauri having a bit of a struggle so far, Aston Martin have definitely increased their performance from last season. And I think with Giovinazzi's form he's currently in and with Stroll certainly not doing badly at the moment, they've got a chance at some good results next season, perhaps take the fight to McLaren and Ferrari for best of the rest. Now looking at the next lineup, we have Chevrolet, and you'll see another change here. Of course, first of all, O'Ward staying with the team. Chevrolet, new team in 2021. This is going to be their sophomore season, so they'll be looking to start to solidify their place in Formula 1, prove that they weren't just a one-off fluke getting that good position in the Constructors' Championship. Whilst it certainly wasn't a top position in the Constructors they got last season, they did get a decent haul of points, especially O'Ward really delivering for the Chevrolet team last year, but their car didn't look quite as good. They've brought in Carlos Sainz from Ferrari, a driver who had a tough old season in 2021, and I think it's very much a new opportunity for him at Chevrolet, a team that could do with a driver like him to bring in experience, and expect to see Chevrolet doing things next season. And I think we could well see their development could well skyrocket with the experience that Carlos Sainz brings in, so keep an eye out for the Chevrolet team, another team that is one to look out for. Now we come to Alfa Romeo. They've got a whole new driver lineup here. Kimi Raikkonen retired at the end of the 2021 Formula 1 season, leaving a space open, and with Giovinazzi going off to Aston Martin, that left 2 spaces open at the Alfa Romeo team. Those spaces have been filled by Robert Schwartzman, leaving Chevrolet, only scoring 1 point for the team, whilst his teammate Pato O'Ward did much better in that car. He just wasn't happy in that environment. I don't think it was helped by the fact they had 2 rookies in. The pressure was very much on for those drivers. Joining Alfa Romeo, perhaps a little bit less pressure on his shoulders here, and a whole new car, maybe that'll suit him better. And alongside him, Mick Schumacher. After a season where we didn't really see much of him in the Haas car, he thinks that giving him a car like the Alfa Romeo, now that he can sort of finally have a car that is not necessarily a front of the midfield car, maybe not even a midfield car, but a car that has that opportunity to fight, he thinks that maybe now he can show off what he can do. Now we come to Alpine, who have kept their driver lineup. A team that had, well, I think it's fair to say, quite a tough 2021 season. They never quite hit any good form. Both drivers having a good race here or there, but the car, it just, unlike their rivals, it always seemed to finish where it deserved to finish, which doesn't sound like a bad season. But whilst the car was arguably up there with the Aston Martins and the Alfa Romeos and the Chevrolets as well, when there was the crazy races where their rivals did thrive, like Alfa Romeo, of course, getting a couple of those great results, they just didn't quite have form in those races, which cost them out big time, and left them really on the back foot compared to their rivals, and ended up in 9th position in the Constructors' Championship. So I think they're looking for stability going into this next season, just to try and find some form going into 2022. Now we come to Williams, a team that has kept their driver lineup as well. They weren't really there like some of their rivals at the back of the field. They never really showed up to any races last season. Not ever really that I can think of getting into the mix for the points paying positions. Maybe if they'd had a bit more luck here or there, they could have got into the fight for points. But their car was just not a competitive car at all last season. However, their drivers, on the other hand, had proven many times last season that they've got some talent in their drivers. So they've kept those 2 drivers on, and I don't think they had any reason to change going into the season. They needed stability as a team that is on the up, hopefully. They just need to keep with what they've got, and if they keep doing that, they'll build on that car, and maybe once they've got a better car, they can look at some different drivers. But at the moment, Williams is just looking for stability and just trying to hold on to what they have at the moment. Next up is Haas, who have taken on a new driver in the form of Guan Yu Zhou, of course replacing the outgoing Mick Schumacher. Zhou, a F2 driver, of course, did very well in 2021. Of course, that was his 3rd year in Formula 2, though, so perhaps that's a sign that he's not a standout rookie driver that's blitzed his way through the junior categories. But joining Mazepin at Haas, they've arguably looked even worse than last season going into 2022. The car's just not there at all so far. But the only good thing they can say is that they have got company at the back there. They're not alone at the back of the field, with Williams also looking like they've got a pretty tough time ahead. Those 2 teams both looking way off the pace going into 2022. And quite frankly going to be looking for a miracle in the 2022 season to get themselves some points, but at the moment not looking good for those 2 backmarker teams. Here is the calendar that these drivers will be facing, and these teams will be facing for the 2022 season. You can see here, round 1 will be once again in Bahrain, but round 2 has changed. We've got a bit of a change to the calendar here. Portimao has dropped off the calendar after its brief time in F1. It didn't prove, whilst it had its decent races, it never really had a truly entertaining Grand Prix, and as a result, because it couldn't quite bring enough money as some of its competitors for that spot on the calendar, they sadly had to drop off, which means that shuffled Spain into round 2 of the season. Spain is hopeful going into this season. The track with a resurfacing has led to the track being very, very abrasive, meaning that tyre wear is going to be huge at that circuit this season, so we could well see a tyre strategy race come into play there. Round 3 will take place in Canada. If it's dry, we may well see a different outcome to last season, but last season wasn't an absolute classic, with most of the battle being in the midfield, but of course that race had that wet start which sort of separated the top runners in the race, so perhaps we could see a bit more drama there this season. Then it's round 4 in France. Well, what a race that was last season. If we get anything like that this season, I'll be over the moon watching that one. That would be just brilliant to see another mix-up like that. So if France can do what it did last season, then I think we'll all be very happy. Then round 5 in Austria, a track that again proved to make a very strong Grand Prix last year. If it does anything like that again, it's very similar to France. Create a good Grand Prix. If it can just repeat that this season, I'm sure we'll all be happy. But even if it doesn't, Austria, it's such a fun track to watch the cars race at, and of course the home Grand Prix for Red Bull, a very important circuit on the calendar that I don't think should go anywhere anytime soon. Then round 6, a new track on the calendar, the track that's filled that spot left by Portimao. It is Hungary that joins the calendar. A track not known for its great overtaking, but similar to Spain, it could well bring in that tyre strategy battle. So the organisers of that Grand Prix are hopeful that they will create a true spectacle with that Grand Prix. After we saw what happened to Portimao, I'm sure they'll be a bit nervous that if they don't, maybe they'll get knocked off the calendar. But at the moment, it's looking good for the Hungarian Grand Prix to produce a decent race. Then round 7 in Spa. Spa is just it's a classic circuit in Formula 1. It would not be Formula 1 without it. And Spa, of course, remains on the calendar. Monza, round 8 of the season, created a very nice race last season. The Temple of Speed will return Round 9, Singapore, another race that created some action last season, mixed up the championship. It was the perfect penultimate round and set us up perfectly for the finale in Mexico, and I think we can all agree that finale was absolutely spectacular to watch in Mexico City, and I'm glad to say that it will return to the streets of Mexico once again next season. But that was it for your preview for the 2022 Formula 1 season. Gonna have to get used to saying that one now as we look ahead to the 2022 season. I hope it's going to be an exciting one. I think it will be an exciting one with performance mixed up a little bit. You've got Red Bull perhaps dropping back a little, Mercedes perhaps going to be the favourites going into this season, McLaren perhaps getting the mix after a strong end to their season. It really is all to play for going into the season. This is the perfect chance for a slightly smaller team to pick up where they lost out last season with the new regulations. They have that opportunity to prove themselves in Formula 1, and that is an opportunity that many teams will be targeting for this season. But equally, it's a chance for some teams to lose their footing in Formula 1 and perhaps drop their way down the order. So it really is a balancing act as they go into a new Formula 1 season. But that has been it for the 2022 season preview here in the Alternative Apex series. I hope you've all enjoyed watching this preview, and I hope you're all excited as I am for the 2022 season. If it's half as good as last season, I'm sure we'll all be very, very happy. But that was it for now. Tomorrow we will have round 1 of the season in Bahrain, under the lights though, compared to pre-season testing, so perhaps that'll mix things up for these drivers. I hope you're all looking forward to it, and until then, goodbye.